Before you head to the tattoo parlor to get that matching ink with your best friend, you might want to hear these stats. We've all seen someone with a tattoo they definitely didn't want anymore, but it turns out the honeymoon phase with a new tattoo is surprisingly short. According to recent studies, about 15% of people already regret their decision just 6 months after getting inked. But here's where it gets really interesting. That number skyrockets as time goes on. By the 2-year mark, over half of all people, 51%, confess they regret their tattoos. Whether it's a name of an ex, a design that didn't age well, or just a change in personal style, most people end up wishing they had a delete button for their skin. So, while tattoos are technically permanent, our feelings about them clearly aren't. It makes you realize that the most important part of getting a tattoo isn't the artist you choose, but making sure you'll still love that design 2 years from now. Have you ever had a light bulb moment? Well, it turns out that's more than just a metaphor. Right now, inside your head, your brain is busy generating a surprising amount of power. In fact, while you're awake, your brain produces enough electricity to actually power a small LED light. It's all thanks to the roughly 86 billion neurons in your skull. Every time you think, move, or feel something, these neurons are sending tiny electrical signals to one another. While a single neuron firing doesn't produce much on its own, the collective effort of millions of them firing simultaneously creates a constant electrical current. We're talking about roughly 12 to 25 watts of power. While that might not be enough to charge your phone or your car, it is perfectly sufficient to keep a low-voltage LED glowing bright. Have you ever met someone who was so smart, they actually seemed, well, a bit foolish? The legendary writer and polemicist Christopher Hitchens had a pretty sharp take on this. He once said that intellectuals never look more foolish than when they start believing they are the last civilized people on Earth. It's a classic trap. When we become experts in a field or read a few more books than the person next to us, it's easy to start looking down on everyone else. But Hitchens argues that this sense of superiority is the exact opposite of true intelligence. Real wisdom involves the humility to realize that civilization isn't a status you achieve and then pull the ladder up behind you. It's a collective effort that requires listening as much as it does lecturing. The moment you think you're the only civilized one left in the room, you've probably lost the very thing that made you an intellectual in the first place. So, stay curious, stay humble, and remember, being civilized is a team sport. Every single night, you settle into a private theater where the movies are bizarre, hyper-realistic, and often completely nonsensical. We call them dreams, and while they feel like a core part of being human, they are among science's greatest unsolved mysteries. Scientists have mapped exactly when dreams happen, usually during the REM stage of sleep. But the why remains a massive question mark. There is currently no full understanding of why our brains spend hours every night creating complex, vivid stories while we sleep. Some researchers believe it's a way your brain processes emotions or practices responding to threats. Others think it's just the brain's way of defragmenting your memories, like a computer cleaning up its hard drive. But despite all our advanced technology and brain scans, we still can't explain why you might dream about flying through a neon city or having a conversation with a talking cat. It's a reminder that even in 2026, the most sophisticated piece of technology in the known universe, your brain, still keeps its best secrets to itself. You've likely been eating bananas your whole life, but there's a good chance you've been opening them the wrong way this entire time. Most of us naturally grab the long stem and pull, but that often leads to a bruised top or a stubborn stem that just won't snap. The real trick is to flip the banana over and open it from the other end. By simply pinching the small black tip at the bottom, the peel splits open instantly and perfectly without squishing any of the fruit inside. If you think this sounds a bit backward, just look at the experts. Monkeys. They've been opening bananas from the bottom for millions of years. It allows them to use the stem as a built-in handle while they eat, which is way more efficient than the way we do it. So stop fighting the stem and start pinching the bottom. It's faster, cleaner, and honestly, a total game changer for your next snack. We've all been there. You finish brushing your teeth, feel all fresh and clean, and then you take a sip of orange juice. Suddenly it tastes like you just drank liquid battery acid mixed with disappointment. But why does this happen? It's not just in your head. It's actually a temporary chemical sabotage of your taste buds. It turns out that specific chemicals in your toothpaste hit your mouth with a double whammy. First, they block your sweet receptors, making it impossible to taste any of the natural sugars in the juice. At the same time, these chemicals actually amplify your bitterness receptors. So instead of a balanced, sweet and tangy breakfast drink, all your brain registers is the intense, overwhelming bitterness of the citric acid. Essentially, your toothpaste is lying to your brain about what's actually in the glass. Next time, maybe wait at least 30 minutes before reaching for the OJ, unless you really enjoy the taste of citrus regret. We often think of the first contact between Europeans and Native Americans happening in 1492 with Columbus, but your DNA might tell a much older, more surprising story. A fascinating genetic study revealed that several Icelandic families with deep roots in the country carry mitochondrial DNA typically found only in Native Americans. This specific DNA is passed down exclusively from mothers to their children. This means it's highly likely that a Native American woman traveled back to Iceland with the Vikings over 1,000 years ago and had children there. While we've known for a while that Vikings reached North America long before other Europeans, this genetic bread ball suggests the connection was much more personal than just a few temporary settlements. It turns out the history of the Americas and the North Atlantic was intertwined far earlier than previously claimed. So the next time you see a Viking, remember, they might have been bringing home more than just stories from the New World. They were bringing home ancestors. When you think of Swiss cheese, you probably picture a block full of those iconic round holes. For decades, we were told those eyes were caused by bacteria releasing carbon dioxide during the fermentation process. But it turns out that's not the whole story. In reality, those holes aren't a mandatory part of Swiss cheese. They're actually a sign of dirty milk. Recent studies have shown that the holes are caused by tiny microscopic specks of hay dust and impurities that fall into the milk buckets during collection. These particles weaken the structure of the curd, allowing gas to accumulate and form a hole. As modern milking technology has become cleaner and more automated, the hay dust has disappeared, and so have the holes. In fact, if you find a piece of Swiss cheese that is perfectly smooth, with no holes at all, it simply means the cheese was prepared with extreme cleanliness. The holes are so iconic that some manufacturers actually avoid this super clean state to keep the classic look we expect. So next time you're eating Swiss cheese, remember, those famous holes are basically just the fingerprints of old-school, rustic farming. If you're looking to lose a few pounds, the secret might not be what you're eating, but how you're eating it. We live in a world that's always in a rush, and that includes our meal times. But it turns out that inhaling your lunch could be doing more damage than you think. Recent studies have found that slow eaters were 42% less likely to be overweight or obese compared to those who eat quickly. The reason is actually pretty simple. It takes your brain about 20 minutes to receive the signal from your stomach that you're full. When you eat too fast, you easily breeze past that satisfied mark and keep going until you're uncomfortably stuffed. By simply slowing down, you give your body's natural hunger sensors time to catch up, often leading you to eat significantly less without even trying. What if I told you that the secret to ruling an empire and a Silicon Valley giant is the exact same diet? According to ancient tradition, Egyptian pharaohs maintained absolute mental focus by eating just one meal a day, right at sunset. For 3,000 years, they reportedly skipped breakfast, lunch, and snacks, surviving on nothing but water and work until nightfall to maintain what they called absolute mental focus. While history suggests most ordinary Egyptians actually enjoyed 2 meals a day, the elites were essentially pioneers of what we now call OMAD, 1 meal a day. And it's not just an ancient myth, In 2024, researchers at a Princeton metabolic lab reportedly found evidence that this type of extreme fasting can trigger a unique level of cognitive sharpness. This is the exact same rule tech mogul Jack Dorsey follows today. He famously skips breakfast and lunch to stay in a very focused point of mind, saving his one nutritious meal for the evening to maximize his daily output. Whether you're building pyramids or global tech platforms, it seems that hunger might actually be the ultimate productivity hack. If you're the person who's always running 5 minutes behind, stop apologizing. Science might actually be on your side. It turns out that people who are habitually late are often more successful and creative than their punctual counterparts. While it might seem like a bad habit, this time blindness is often linked to a more optimistic outlook and a brain that thrives on multitasking. Because late people are constantly navigating time crunches, they tend to develop significantly better problem-solving skills. They are used to thinking on their feet and finding creative ways to overcome obstacles on the fly. So, while the rest of the world is watching the clock, your brain is busy honing the exact traits needed for high-level innovation and success. You aren't just behind schedule. You're likely just more focused on the creative process than the ticking hand of a watch. Being a little late might just be the secret price of being a creative powerhouse. We've all heard of irreconcilable differences, but 500 years ago, there was a reason for divorce that might make modern Starbucks addicts very happy. In 15th century Turkish culture, coffee wasn't just a morning ritual, it was a legal right. At the time, coffee was so central to the fabric of society that under the law, a woman had the freedom to divorce her husband if he failed to provide her with a sufficient daily quota of coffee. While it sounds extreme today, back then, providing coffee was considered a basic household necessity right alongside food and shelter. If a husband couldn't keep the chesve, that's the traditional copper pot, full, it was seen as a major failure in his marital duties. So, the next time you're feeling a bit grumpy because you haven't had your caffeine fix yet, just remember, there was once a time and place where that no coffee mood wasn't just a personal problem, it was a legally recognized crisis. Being grounded in your marriage apparently used to mean something very different. Think you're looking at a plain, solid-colored human in the mirror? Think again. It turns out we are a lot more like tigers and zebras than we realize. Every single human being is actually covered in a complex pattern of stripes and swirls called Blaschko's lines. The only reason you haven't seen them is that they are normally completely invisible to the naked eye. These patterns are essentially a map of how your cells moved and divided while you were still developing as an embryo. While they stay hidden under normal conditions, they can suddenly become visible under ultraviolet light or a black light. Certain rare medical conditions can also cause these hidden patterns to appear on the skin's surface. So, while we might look like we have uniform skin, we're actually walking around with a secret, beautiful, and highly unique biological fingerprint etched into our bodies. You aren't just a person, you're a masterpiece of invisible art. We all like to think we're the hero of our own story. But some people might be taking that main character energy a little too far. According to recent surveys, about 8% of Americans believe they could actually beat a lion in an unarmed one-on-one fight. To put that in perspective, we're talking about an apex predator that can weigh over 400 pounds, run 50 miles per hour, and has a bite force strong enough to crush bone. While most of us would probably be looking for the nearest tree to climb, 1 out of every 12 people you pass on the street is apparently walking around with a secret confidence that they could take down the king of the jungle with nothing but their bare hands. Whether it's extreme optimism or just a total misunderstanding of how nature works, it's a hilarious reminder of just how much we can overestimate our own abilities when we're safe behind a screen. Imagine every living thing you see today, every person, every tree, and every tiny insect is part of a very exclusive 1% club. Because here's the mind-blowing reality. 99% of all species that have ever existed on Earth are now extinct. That represents more than 5 billion species that lived and died throughout our planet's history. When we walk through a museum and see a T-Rex or an ancient trilobite, we aren't just looking at prehistoric animals. We're looking at the statistical rule of life, not the exception. For every single species alive today, there are roughly 100 others that didn't make it to the present day. Earth is essentially a massive ancient library where most of the books have been permanently checked out. It's a bit humbling to realize that we, and everything we see around us, are the ultimate survivors of a game where nearly everyone else eventually lost. Being part of that lucky 1%? That's arguably the greatest win in history. Next time you're stuck on a grueling 12-hour international flight, just be glad you aren't trying to reach our nearest celestial neighbor. Have you ever looked up at the moon and wondered how long it would actually take to get there if you could just fly? If you could hop on a standard commercial airplane and fly it directly into space toward the moon, your journey would take roughly 20 days. That is nearly 3 full weeks of flight mode and tiny bags of pretzels. To put that into perspective, the Apollo astronauts made the trip in about 3 days, but they were traveling at speeds over 24,000 miles per hour. Your average jet travels at around 550 miles per hour, approximately 885 kilometers per hour, which is why the commute becomes a marathon. The moon is about 238,855 miles, approximately 385,000 kilometers away. If you drove a car there at highway speeds without stopping, it would take you about 6 months. So a 20-day flight actually sounds like a bit of a bargain. We all know it as LA, or the City of Angels. But if you lived there back in 1781, you'd need a lot more breath just to say where you're from. When the city was founded on September 4th, 1781, its official name wasn't just 2 letters. It was actually El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora la Reina de los Ángeles de Porciúncula. That translates to the town of Our Lady, the Queen of the Angels of Porciúncula. Over the centuries, we've obviously done a lot of editing to make it more billboard-friendly, eventually shortening it down to just the middle part, Los Angeles. Could you imagine trying to fit that original 12-word mouthful on a modern-day license plate? It's a good reminder that while LA is famous for its fast-paced lifestyle today, its history started with something much more formal and significantly more exhausting to pronounce. If you think a daily shower is enough to keep you fresh, you might want to take some notes from the people of Brazil. While most of the world settled on a once-a-day routine, Brazilians have turned hygiene into a high-performance sport. Brazil is by far the country that takes the most showers, with the average person lathering up every 12 hours. That's at least 2 showers a day, every single day, with many people jumping in for a 3rd or even 4th rinse if they've been outside. It's not just about the tropical heat, though that's a big part of it. In Brazilian culture, staying impeccably clean is a major social expectation. It's perfectly normal to brush your teeth at the office after lunch, or to take a quick, refresh shower before meeting friends for dinner. While the rest of us might be hitting the snooze button, a huge portion of the Brazilian population is already on their 2nd rinse of the day. It turns out that when it comes to being squeaky clean, Brazil is living in a league of its own. We all know cats are masters of stealth. They can sneak up on you in the dark, land silently from 6 feet up, and apparently, they've even perfected the art of the invisible fart. Believe it or not, just like humans, cats pass gas. But because they're the refined predators of the animal kingdom, most of the time you won't even know it's happening. In a healthy cat, flatulence is almost always completely silent and odorless. However, if your feline friend suddenly breaks that stealth protocol, take note. If your cat starts producing audible sounds or noticeable odors when they release gas, it's actually a medical red flag. While a little stink might seem funny, it often signals digestive issues or dietary sensitivities that require professional attention. If your cat's silent but deadly game becomes loud and stinky, skip the jokes and consult your veterinarian. It turns out that for cats, a quiet stomach is the ultimate sign of a healthy hunter. Imagine if you could remember exactly what you were doing, what the weather was like, and even what you ate on any random Tuesday 10 years ago. For most of us, memories fade into a hazy blur, but for a tiny group of people, life is a permanent HD recording. This rare condition is called hyperthymesia. People with this syndrome can remember almost every single day of their lives in vivid, startling detail. It's not just about having a good memory. It's an involuntary, near-perfect recall of their entire personal past. While it sounds like a literal superpower, it can also be a heavy burden. Imagine being unable to forget and move on from a bad day or an embarrassing moment because the memory remains as fresh as the day it happened. Their brains are essentially massive living archives where no file ever gets deleted. It's a fascinating reminder that our ability to forget is actually a vital feature of the human brain, not just a flaw. Without it, we'd all be trapped in a never-ending loop of our own history. You've probably heard people call scrolling through social media brain rot, but some viral claims are taking it to a whole new level. There is a shocking stat circulating that watching short-form content can actually harm your brain 5 times more than alcohol. Now, while comparing a digital habit to the physical toxicity of alcohol is more of a provocative headline than a settled scientific fact, the psychology behind it is very real. These platforms are engineered to trigger dopamine loops, the same chemical reward system involved in addiction, by delivering a constant stream of new, high-energy information every few seconds. The real concern isn't that your brain is rotting, but that it's being rewired. Frequent consumption of sub-60-second clips is linked to a shrinking attention span and a decreased ability to engage with complex, long-form tasks. Essentially, your brain gets so used to the instant hit that it forgets how to work for a long-term reward. While it might not be physically 5 times worse than a drink, your ability to stay focused for more than a minute might be the real casualty of the scroll. When the Eiffel Tower opened in 1889, it was the tallest structure in the world, a marvel of modern engineering that everyone in Paris wanted to climb. But while the public was marveling at the steel and rivets, designer Gustave Eiffel was hiding a secret right at the very top. A private luxury apartment tucked away 1,000 feet above the city streets. This wasn't some cramped attic. It was a cozy, high-end flat filled with velvet furniture, colorful wallpaper, and even a grand piano. While the rest of Paris was strictly forbidden from entering, Eiffel used the space as his personal sanctuary and a laboratory for scientific experiments. He didn't just spend his time there alone, though. Eiffel hosted the intellectual elite of the 19th century in his sky-high parlor, including legendary inventor Thomas Edison. Reportedly, elite Parisians offered Eiffel a fortune to rent the space for even a single night, but he refused every offer, preferring to keep his apartment in the clouds exclusive to himself and his prestigious guests. How much money do you think you need to be considered rich? If you're thinking in the millions, you might be surprised by how the rest of the world is living. It turns out that wealth is a lot more relative than we realize. If you currently have just $4,210 to your name, including your savings and the value of your possessions, you are actually richer than 50% of the people on Earth. That's right, half of the global population is living on significantly less than that amount. While a few $1,000s might feel like a small cushion in some parts of the world, on a global scale, it puts you right in the middle of the top half of the human race. It's a massive reality check that highlights the extreme levels of economic inequality across our planet. So, the next time you're stressing over your bank balance, just remember, if you've crossed that $4,000 mark, you've already out-earned billions of people. Wealth isn't always about being a billionaire. Sometimes, it's just about having a bit more than the other 4 billion people standing next to you. Abraham Lincoln is famous for saving the Union, but inside the White House, he was mostly known as a world-class cat person. Believe it or not, Lincoln was actually the very first president to bring cats into the executive mansion. His favorite was a cat named Tabby, and she wasn't just a pet. She was treated like a full-blown member of the first family. While most of us might get in trouble for letting a cat on the counter, Lincoln took it to a whole new level. Tabby would regularly sit right at the dinner table with the president and his family during formal meals. And if you think your cat is spoiled, listen to this. Lincoln was frequently spotted feeding Tabby directly from the table using a literal gold fork. When his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, once complained that it was shameful to feed a cat with expensive silverware in front of guests, the president reportedly replied, "If the gold fork was good enough for former President James Buchanan, it's good enough for Tabby." Ever been listening to a song and suddenly felt a wave of chills run down your spine? That physical reaction isn't just you really liking the track. It's actually a high-speed chemical hijack of your brain. Scientists have discovered that those musical goosebumps happen when a song does something unexpected. Maybe it's a sudden shift in key, a soaring vocal high note, or a beat drop you didn't see coming. These surprises catch your brain off guard, triggering an immediate and intense rush of dopamine. That dopamine hit is the same chemical reward your brain releases when you eat your favorite food or win a game. Essentially, your brain is rewarding you for the emotional journey the music is taking you on. Not everyone experiences this skin orgasm, as some researchers call it. But if you do, it means your brain has a particularly strong connection between its auditory and emotional centers. So the next time a playlist gives you the chills, just remember, your brain is literally throwing a dopamine party in your honor. Imagine living in the middle of a scorching desert over 2,000 years ago, yet still being able to enjoy a cold drink or even a bowl of sorbet in the middle of summer. It sounds impossible, but the ancient Persians actually mastered refrigeration centuries before electricity was even a concept. They built massive dome-shaped structures called yakhchals. These weren't just buildings, they were high-tech evaporative coolers. Using a combination of wind towers to catch the breeze and deep underground cooling chambers, they could keep temperatures low enough to store ice year-round. The walls were made of a special heat-resistant mortar that was completely waterproof, keeping the desert heat out and the precious ice frozen. They would harvest ice from nearby mountains in the winter, or even freeze water in shaded canals at night to stock these desert freezers. It's a masterclass in ancient engineering that proves you don't always need a plug to stay cool. You just need to know how to work with nature. Have you ever walked into a used bookstore or an old library and just inhaled? There's a specific nostalgic scent that old books have, and it turns out there's a very delicious scientific reason for it. As the paper in these books ages over decades, the organic compounds within the pages, specifically lignin and cellulose, begin to break down. During this slow chemical decomposition, the paper releases a variety of volatile organic compounds into the air. One of the primary compounds produced during this process is vanillin. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the exact same compound that gives vanilla its signature sweet and comforting aroma. So when you're smelling a first edition classic from the 1950s, your nose isn't just detecting dust and history. It's actually picking up a scent profile that is almost identical to a fresh batch of vanilla cookies. It's essentially a chemical bakery happening right there on your bookshelf. Next time you see someone sniffing a book, don't judge. They're just enjoying some highbrow aromatherapy. Have you ever wondered why you're left-handed or right-handed? It seems like a strange limitation. Wouldn't it be better if we were all perfectly ambidextrous? Well, it turns out your brain is actually a master of efficiency. Most people have a dominant hand because their brains are trying to conserve energy. Instead of spending the massive amount of computing power required to train both hands to have equal, high-level fine motor control, your brain specializes in one hand. By focusing all that complex training on just one side, your brain creates a high-speed neural pathway that makes tasks like writing or using a fork feel like second nature. Training the other side to that same level would require significantly more neural resources and energy. So, being one-handed isn't a flaw. It's a biological hack that allows your brain to stay fast and focused on other things. You're essentially trading a bit of symmetry for a whole lot of efficiency. Imagine walking up to a massive ancient temple 2,000 years ago, and as the priest lights a fire on the altar, the giant bronze doors slowly swing open on their own. No guards, no hidden pulleys, just pure, ancient magic. Except it wasn't magic. It was the genius of a man named Heron of Alexandria. Long before the first industrial machines, ancient Greek temples used steam-powered technology to automate their entrances. Lighting a fire on the altar heated up a sealed tank of water hidden underneath. The pressure builds. As the water boiled, the resulting steam increased the air pressure, forcing the water through a series of pipes into a separate bucket. Once that bucket became heavy enough, it would drop, pulling a set of ropes and pulleys that rotated the door hinges. When the fire died down and the air cooled, the process reversed, and the doors would magically shut. This incredible concept predates modern industrial machinery by nearly 2 millennia. It's a perfect reminder that the future often arrives a lot earlier than we think. Imagine walking through the scorching sands of ancient Egypt, carrying a symbol so powerful that it was believed to hold the literal gaze of a god. This is the Eye of Horus, and for thousands of years, it was the ultimate high-tech security system of the ancient world. In Egyptian mythology, this wasn't just a pretty design. It was a symbol of healing, royal power, and divine watchfulness. It represented the eye that the sky god Horus lost in a legendary battle with Set, which was later magically restored. Because of this, the Wedjat, as the Egyptians called it, became the go-to amulet for anyone needing protection against evil or a bit of good health. Sailors would even paint it on the bows of their ships to ensure a safe journey across the Nile. It was their way of saying, "We've got a god looking out for us." While we use passwords and cameras today, the ancients preferred the unblinking, protective stare of a celestial hawk. If you're looking for a simple way to give your health a major boost, you might want to head to the produce aisle and pick up a humble sweet potato. While most of us think of them as just a tasty side dish, a single baked sweet potato is actually a nutritional powerhouse. It provides a staggering 400% of the vitamins your body needs daily for maintaining healthy eyes and glowing skin. The secret lies in its high beta-carotene content, which your body converts into vitamin A. This essential nutrient acts like a natural internal sunblock, helping to protect your skin cells from damage and keeping your vision sharp. Next time you're planning a meal, remember that this simple root vegetable is essentially a high-dose beauty treatment and an eye health supplement all wrapped in one delicious package. Sometimes, the best health hacks are the ones you can find right in your kitchen. Have you ever listened to a recording of yourself and thought, "Wait, is that actually what I sound like?" Most of us find our recorded voices cringy or high-pitched, but there's a fascinating biological reason why you're essentially being catfished by your own head. When you speak, you aren't just hearing the sound waves traveling through the air to your ears like everyone else does. You are also hearing your voice through bone conduction. Because your voice vibrates through your own skull, it adds deeper, richer, and more resonant tones that a microphone simply cannot capture. Think of it like this. You've been listening to the bass-boosted version of yourself your entire life. When you hear a recording, you're finally hearing the raw track without those internal vibrations. So don't worry, you don't actually sound bad on tape. You're just missing the built-in subwoofer that lives inside your head. Would you believe that a high-end single malt whiskey could actually start its journey in a doctor's office? It sounds like a gross urban legend, but there is some wild science behind it. The urine of a person with diabetes can actually be so high in sugar that it can be purified and fermented. In fact, researchers and artists have successfully extracted those sugars to create high-quality, single malt whiskey. Because the kidneys of a diabetic person are working overtime to flush out excess glucose, their urine becomes a literal sugar source. Once that sugar is filtered and purified, it can be used just like the sugars from grain to feed yeast and produce alcohol. While you won't find diabetic-aged single malt on your local liquor store shelves anytime soon, it's a fascinating, if slightly disturbing, example of how biological waste can be transformed into a luxury product. Next time you're sipping on a glass of the good stuff, maybe don't think too hard about where the sugar came from. What if I told you that high-tech nanotechnology wasn't invented in a modern lab, but in the 4th century? Meet the Lycurgus cup, a masterpiece of Roman glasswork that holds a secret only visible when the light hits it just right. Under normal lighting, the cup appears solid and opaque green, but the second you place a light source inside it or shine light through it, the glass magically turns glowing translucent red. For centuries, this was considered ancient magic, but modern scientists finally figured out the trick. The Roman glassmakers had infused the glass with a precise mixture of silver and gold particles ground to just 70 nanometers. That is roughly 1,000th the size of a single grain of salt. These nanoparticles are so small that they scatter light differently depending on the direction from which it's coming. It's a level of engineering so sophisticated that we couldn't even replicate it until the late 20th century. It turns out the Dark Ages weren't so dark. They just had better lighting than we realized. Have you ever wondered just how much of your life is spent standing in front of a mirror? Whether it's the perfect eyeliner wing or just making sure your hair isn't a total disaster, those minutes really start to add up. Recent studies show that the average woman will spend approximately 2.5 years of her life just getting ready. Think about that for a second. That is over 900 days, or roughly 22,000 hours spent applying makeup, styling hair, and picking out the perfect outfit. To put it in perspective, in that same amount of time, you could earn a full university degree, learn to speak 3 new languages fluently, or even travel around the entire world multiple times. While it might feel like just a few minutes every morning, over a lifetime, the mirror becomes one of the most visited places in our world. So next time you're running late because of your mascara, just remember, you aren't just doing your makeup, you're contributing to a multi-year life project. You might think that in the age of satellites and GPS, every inch of our planet has been mapped and explored. But there is a massive green blind spot right in the heart of South America. Experts estimate that nearly 60% of the Amazon rainforest remains completely unexplored. Think about that for a second. We're talking about an area twice the size of India that is still a total mystery to modern science. Because the canopy is so thick and the terrain so incredibly dense, there are likely thousands of undiscovered plant, insect, and animal species living there that humans have never even seen. Some researchers even believe there could be lost ancient civilizations hidden beneath those trees, completely swallowed by the jungle over centuries. We're so focused on exploring Mars and deep space, but the greatest frontier might actually be right here on Earth, hidden under a blanket of green. Imagine sailing into a magnificent ancient harbor, only to have government officials board your ship, not to look for gold or spices, but for books. In the ancient city of Alexandria, this was actually the law. Any ship that docked in the city was required to hand over every single book on board to the local authorities. But this wasn't a book burning. These officials were scouts for the legendary Library of Alexandria. They would take the original scrolls, meticulously hand copy them, and then, here's the kicker, they would give the copy back to the owner and keep the original for the library's collection. It was essentially a state-sponsored copy and paste operation, designed to make Alexandria the undisputed intellectual capital of the world. While we use digital downloads today, the ancients were literally borrowing the world's knowledge, one ship at a time. Ever wondered how you can sometimes just feel which way is north, even without looking at a map? It turns out you might have a hidden superpower tucked away inside your skull. Research suggests that humans actually have traces of magnetite in their brains. Magnetite is a naturally magnetic mineral, and its presence means we might share a hidden compass with migratory birds and sea turtles. This ability is known as magnetoreception. While for most of us, this operates entirely below our conscious radar, it is essentially a dormant ability to sense the Earth's magnetic field. So, the next time you manage to find your way back to your hotel in a strange city without checking your phone, it might not just be luck. It could be your brain's ancient internal navigation system kicking in. You aren't just walking. You're essentially a living, breathing compass. Imagine owning an instrument so perfect that even with all our 21st century technology, we still can't figure out how it was made. This is the enduring mystery of the Stradivarius violin. Crafted in the 1700s by Antonio Stradivari, these violins are widely considered the finest musical instruments ever created. Their sound is described as unmatched, richer, more powerful, and more complex than anything built since. But here's the crazy part. We have tried everything to replicate them. Scientists have performed high-resolution CT scans on the original frames. Experts have meticulously copied the exact species of wood used. Chemists have even spent years analyzing the chemical makeup of the original varnish. The result? None of the copies sound the same. Whether it was a secret technique, a specific climate event that altered the wood's density, or just pure genius, the Stradivarius secret died with its creator over 250 years ago. It's a beautiful reminder that even in an age of AI and 3D printing, some things are still truly irreplaceable masterpieces. In the summer of 1817, one of the most well-documented monster sightings in history took place in Gloucester Harbor, Massachusetts. This wasn't just a lone fisherman's tale. Hundreds of reliable witnesses, including clergymen, sailors, and magistrates, all reported seeing the exact same thing. They described a massive, 60-foot-long sea serpent swimming through the harbor waters. The sightings were so consistent and frequent that the Linnean Society of New England even launched a formal investigation, collecting sworn affidavits from dozens of people who watched the creature from the shore and from boats. While modern science has never confirmed the existence of such a giant serpent, the 1817 event remains a fascinating mystery because of the sheer number of credible people who were convinced they were looking at a real-life sea monster. If you find it impossible to sit down for a meal without immediately reaching for your remote or phone, you might be doing more than just catching up on your favorite series. While it feels like a harmless way to relax, the habitual need to watch something while eating may be linked to underlying anxiety or depression. For many, background noise and visual stimulation act as a digital buffer, providing a constant stream of distractions that keep uncomfortable thoughts or feelings at bay during what would otherwise be a quiet, reflective moment. It's a subtle way to avoid being alone with one's own mind, turning a basic human necessity, eating, into a form of passive coping. While the occasional dinner and a show is perfectly normal, a total inability to eat in silence can be a signal that your brain is working overtime to drown out internal stress. It's a fascinating modern intersection of technology and mental health that highlights how our smallest daily habits can be windows into our emotional well-being. Have you ever been walking down the street or sitting in a quiet room and suddenly felt a prickle on the back of your neck, only to turn around and find someone looking right at you? It turns out that sixth sense might actually be a biological reality. Research into human perception suggests that your brain can feel when a stranger is staring at you from behind. This phenomenon, often referred to in psychology as scopophobia, is the brain's ability to detect being watched even when the observer is outside the direct field of vision. While it feels like a psychic superpower, scientists believe it's actually an advanced survival mechanism. Your brain is constantly processing subtle environmental cues, tiny changes in shadow, peripheral movement, or even muffled sounds that your conscious mind doesn't notice. This social radar evolved to help our ancestors detect predators or rivals before they could strike. So if you get that sudden feeling that you're being watched, don't just brush it off as paranoia. We like to think we have a pretty good handle on what the universe is made of. Stars, planets, black holes, and vast clouds of gas. But it turns out that all of that stuff we can actually see and measure accounts for only about 5% of everything out there. The rest of the universe is made of something completely invisible and deeply mysterious called dark matter. We know it exists because of its massive gravitational pull. It's essentially the cosmic glue that keeps entire galaxies from flying apart. But it doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect any light. Despite decades of research and the most advanced sensors in human history, no one actually knows what it is. We are essentially living in a vast cosmic ocean where we can only see the foam on the surface of the waves, while the true nature of the deep remains a total mystery. If someone asked you what the color blue tasted like, you'd probably be stumped. We usually think of colors as purely visual experiences, but there is one major exception to the rule. Orange is the only color with confirmed taste, texture, and scent. This is primarily because the color is inextricably linked to the fruit of the same name. In most languages and cultures, the fruit came first, and the name for the specific hue followed. Because we associate the visual colors so strongly with the physical fruit, our brains naturally bridge the gap between sight and our other senses. When you see a vibrant orange, your mind doesn't just process a wavelength of light. It can almost instantly recall the citrusy smell, the porous texture of the peel, and the tart, sweet flavor. It is a rare moment where our senses converge perfectly on a single word. Imagine a seed so tough that it can survive a solo journey across thousands of miles of salt water, landing on a distant shore months later, and still have the power to spring to life. This isn't a science fiction plant, it's the humble coconut. Coconuts are nature's most successful maritime explorers. Because of their unique, fibrous husks and hollow interiors, they are incredibly buoyant, allowing them to float across entire oceans for thousands of miles. Their thick, waterproof shells protect the precious embryo and nutrient-rich water inside from the harsh salt and sun. The most incredible part? Even after months at sea, if a coconut washes up on a sandy beach, it can still take root and grow into a thriving tree. This remarkable resilience is exactly how palm trees spread to almost every tropical island on the planet, long before humans arrived. Imagine waking up after a head injury or a traumatic event and suddenly possessing world-class skills in math, music, or art that you never had before. This isn't the plot of a sci-fi movie. It's a real medical mystery known as savant syndrome. While some people are born with these abilities, many cases involve individuals who demonstrate profound and remarkable knowledge only after suffering a physical or psychological trauma. It is as if the brain, in response to the injury, unlocks a hidden reserve of computing power or rewires itself to access extraordinary talents. These acquired savants can suddenly perform complex mental calculations, play instruments by ear perfectly, or create incredibly detailed drawings from memory. It's a fascinating and sometimes eerie reminder that the human brain might be capable of much more than we realize, just waiting for the right or wrong trigger to unleash its full potential. If you and your friends spend more time roasting each other than giving compliments, you might actually have the strongest bond in the room. While it seems counterintuitive, research suggests that friends who regularly insult each other are 300% more honest and loyal than those who don't. This aggressive style of friendship serves as a unique form of social vetting. Being comfortable enough to trade barbs demonstrates a high level of mutual trust and psychological safety. It signals that the relationship is secure enough to handle blunt truths without the fear of causing genuine offense or damage. Essentially, the ability to laugh at an insult from a friend is a testament to the depth of the loyalty you share. In these circles, a well-timed roast is often a more sincere sign of affection than a polite platitude. We've all heard of the mysterious disappearances in the Atlantic, but there is a dead zone for technology orbiting right above our heads. It is known as the Bermuda Triangle of space. This is a specific zone above Earth where satellites and spacecraft frequently experience malfunctions and glitches for unknown reasons. When sensitive electronics pass through this region, systems can reboot, data can be corrupted, and instruments often behave erratically. Even the International Space Station has to take special precautions when floating through this invisible, high-risk neighborhood. While scientists link the phenomenon to a dip in the Earth's magnetic field that allows more radiation to seep in, the sheer unpredictability of the area makes it one of the most mysterious challenges in modern space exploration. It's a chilling reminder that even in the vastness of space, there are certain places where our best technology simply refuses to work. We are currently living through a massive information boom that is fundamentally changing the world. It is estimated that 90% of all data currently in existence was created in just the last 2 years. To put that scale into perspective, the amount of information humans produce daily now exceeds everything created throughout the entire 20th century. We are generating digital footprints, media, and records at a rate that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago. This rapid expansion highlights just how much our lives have shifted into the digital realm and the incredible processing power required to store and manage the world's collective knowledge. The subversive history of your morning cup. Did you know that your morning cup of joe was once considered a dangerous weapon of revolution? It is true. Coffee has been banned 3 times throughout history, not for health reasons, but because of the subversive ideas it fueled. Mecca, 1511. The governor shut down every coffee house because they were breeding grounds for political dissent. He even infamously called coffee the wine of the devil. Ottoman Empire. In the 1600s, Sultan Murad IV made the consumption of coffee a crime punishable by death. He personally patrolled the streets in disguise to catch and execute coffee lovers. England, 1675. King Charles II tried to ban coffee houses, labeling them headquarters for traitorous talk. However, his ban only lasted 11 days because the public refused to stop. Even the French and American revolutions were planned inside coffee houses. While alcohol makes people passive and tired, caffeine makes them think, organize, and act. The most subversive tool in human history wasn't a sword, but a hot drink and a room full of talkers. If these facts gave you a hit of that musical dopamine rush, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to @SciFactsInfo for your daily dose of the extraordinary. Which of these facts made you question reality the most? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, you aren't just living in the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself. See you in the next one.